Well, we had to turn the mics back on because our next guest got into the studio and just started interviewing you automatically. He's so excited. And, that's pretty good because this is Radio Entrepreneurs and we're all about business and entrepreneurship and success. My name is Jeffrey Davis, and thank you very much for tuning us in. Our next guest, look at him holding back, Marc Cote, business and executive coach, Focal Point Coaching. Hi.
That's right. Hey, good morning. Glad to be here.
Nice to have you, Marc. So, Marc, tell us about, what kind of coaching you're doing and obviously the book that seems to have inspired you.
Right. Yeah, the book that's inspired me is called Conversational Intelligence. It was written by Judith Glazier, an amazing woman. She was an organizational anthropologist and also studied neuroscience. And for about 30 years, she was a consultant to some of the largest corporations around the globe. And during that time, she not only recorded conversations, but went back and studied them and found that 9 out of 10 conversations missed the mark. That means when people left those conversations, they had different ideas on what they agreed on. And what she learned is that that's really holding organizations back from getting to that next level of greatness. So as an executive and business coach, what I do is I try to introduce these concepts as well as others to help my clients who are executives, emerging executives and business leaders really bring their organizations and lead their organizations in the most effective way.
Interesting. So when did you get into all of this and what was your background before and then?
Yeah, great question. You know what, it actually goes way back. We were talking a little bit earlier about some French-Canadian roots and grandparents coming down from Canada.
Not mine, yours.
Yeah, that's mine. That's right, exactly. And
you didn't care about mine, so.
Well, you're the interviewer. You were pummeling
I
me
was
with questions.
listening. I was listening.
That's fantastic. But anyways, my father was a second-generation business owner. And I remember when I was in junior high, he told me, like, Marc, you know what, the business has been really good to us, but there's probably so much more I could have done had I been trained or had a good business partner I could have relied on. It's like, right. Whatever you do, you need to get a good foundation in business, which is why I went to one of the local business schools, went to Bentley University, had a great time there. But what better way to get a good foundation in business than join one of the large accounting firms? So I spent 8 years with EY, formerly
Great
Ernst &
training.
Young. Absolutely great training.
In the audit group or a consulting group?
So it was audit, but it was actually entrepreneurial services. Obviously coming from an entrepreneurial family, you know what, those entrepreneurial roots were really important to me.
Right.
So had a great stint there, realized that partnership probably wasn't the right route for me, and then made the switch over to industry. Spent a dozen years at Dunkin' Brands, another great New England brand,
right.
And a variety.
They got me my first job.
All right, fantastic.
When I moved here from Canada.
It's interesting, when I told my son, he was 2 or 3 years old at the time, that I was working for Dunkin', he thought I was working at the local drive-thru. Right. So he asked, well, can you bring munchkins home? So I did bring munchkins home a lot. Yeah. But anyways, that was the first 20 or so years of my career. And then I actually wanted to do something more entrepreneurial. So had the opportunity to get into the biotech space and help start a global consulting practice that would help biotech and pharma companies develop their drugs. Talk about making a difference. Coffee and donuts were great, but helping develop drugs and bring therapies to patients was amazing. But during that time, with a few of my partners, we actually started a couple biotech companies. I was going to have to raise money for one of those biotech companies, so what better way to do that than actually become an angel investor and learn what investors think and look for. So did that, joined Boston Harbor Angels about 7 or 8 years ago. It helped me learn the investor perspective, so we raised about $25 million for one of our biotech companies. So I was one of the co-founders and the CFO for that. And we brought that forward to a phase 2 clinical trial. Unfortunately, like a lot of these biotech companies, the trials don't always succeed. But it was a tremendous learning experience and has allowed me to not only continue to learn how businesses run, whether it be from a startup or a large corporate perspective, but also how the leadership teams in there can be most effective. So a couple years ago when my scientific partners were retiring and I needed to find out what am I going to do next, business and executive coaching really resonated with me. I loved being in there in the executive suite, thinking like an owner, thinking strategically about where businesses should be going and how to lead the team. Somebody introduced me to Focal Point, and it was a perfect fit. So these days, I work with business owners and executives on helping them run their businesses and lead their teams more successfully.
As a single practitioner?
So you know what? I'm a independent business owner, but Focal Point's actually an international business and coaching organization. It was started by a gentleman named Brian Tracy. A lot of your listeners might be familiar with Brian. He was probably one of the most successful salespeople ever. He's written about 80 business books. And about 20 years ago, he created a Focal Point coaching program and some training programs that we all have access to. So even though we're individual practitioners, we're part of a larger group with some pretty deep resources.
So you're part of a network.
I am part of a network, and so not only do I do coaching myself, but I have a bit of a hybrid role where I'm also the area representative for New England and South Florida. People might say, how did that happen? But it's the life that I've created for myself. We have homes both in New England and in South Florida, so I work from both territories. So not only do I have clients there, but I also look to find talented business professionals who want to be a coach and introduce them to that.
So do you find a difference between the South Florida market and the New England market?
Absolutely.
In New England, you're in New Hampshire, or are you in the Boston area?
Well, great question. I actually grew up in New Hampshire, but for the last 30, 35 years, I've been working here in and around the Boston area.
Okay, so now go back to the other question. Comparing Massachusetts to Florida entrepreneurs. I have my own opinions, but I'm not being interviewed.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? It's really interesting. We have here in the Boston area tremendous depth and a really strong ecosystem. When you think about the ecosystem here, whether it be with the university system, whether it be with the financial capabilities, and or a lot of successful entrepreneurs that have already been in this area and necessarily want to do it again or potentially mentor others. So it's a really robust system around the Boston city center for the most part. If you think about Florida, Florida has so many different markets, whether it be on the Atlantic coast with the Miami, the Lauderdales, the Bocas, or potentially even the Gulf Coast where you have Naples, Fort Myers, and so forth. Both of those coasts are very, very different. I happen to be on the Gulf Coast, so in the Naples area. And one of the things there is there isn't any city center. There are some universities, but it's not like they have here in the Boston or the New England area where there is such a really high...
It's not a hub concentration.
It's definitely not. So very, very different. And although there's a lot of wealth there in South Florida, it's a lot of retired executives. So in some cases they're giving back, but there's actually not a lot of entrepreneurs or early stage businesses that they have the ability to work with like they do here in the New England area. So a lot of difference, but clearly opportunities in both markets.
Do you have a type of company that you like to target that you're most comfortable with?
You know what? One where the leader is really open-minded. So oftentimes, if you're going to try to work with somebody who thinks that they know it all, that's a really difficult client. The ones who actually realize that they can benefit by listening to others and coming into it with an open mind and being open to influence, they are the ones who I think are the most...
Lifelong learners.
Absolutely, that's right. Because once you stop learning, you actually, stop progressing.
Right.
The ones who actually want to continue to learn more and actually do better are the best clients. So,
and not people who just reach out when they think they have a problem. They have to be it has to be a continuous process of learning, who believe in that.
Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes when I start working with clients, they'll retain me because they do have a problem or a challenge. But once they find that we've been working together for a little bit, oftentimes I hear, Marc, if I wasn't having these conversations with you, I wouldn't have the chance to talk to anybody about these things. So it's so important. So that lifelong learning, being open to influence, and really being thoughtful about it is terrific.
Well, very impressive. We've been speaking with Marc Cote, business and executive coach, Focal Point Coaching. Marc, if someone's looking for you at Focal Point, how would they find you?
Yeah, you can actually, I have a website out there, or you can just email me at mcote@focalpointcoaching.com, or I'm here in the Boston area. But find me on LinkedIn as well. It's Marc with a C, M-A-R-C, C-O-T-E.
Great. Thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, fantastic.
Continued success, and keep looking for those lifelong learners. My name is Jeffrey Davis. I like to think of myself as a lifelong learner, and we will be right back